escape. We are here.
That was the voice of a 23-year-old German woman named Anneliese Michel, recorded during one of 67 sanctioned exorcisms. You've probably heard of the movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose, but it only scratches the surface of her story. The truth, documented on dozens of terrifying audio tapes, is far more disturbing. It's a story that ends in a tragic death and a trial that put both the priests who tried to save her and her own parents in the defendant's box. This story forces us to ask a chilling question. What happens when medical science seems to fail and the only explanation left is the one we fear the most? Before the darkness took hold, Anneliese Michel was, by all accounts, a happy and devout young woman in 1960s West Germany. Born in 1952 in the small Bavarian town of Liebelfing, she grew up in an intensely religious Catholic family. Her father, Josef, was a mill owner, and her mother, Anna, raised Anneliese and her three sisters with a deep, almost medieval piety. Life revolved around the church. Mass was a twice-a-week ritual, and prayer was a constant. Some accounts even suggest the family practiced acts of penance, like sleeping on cold floors to atone for the sins of others, showing just how deeply their faith was woven into their lives. Anneliese was described as a bright, kind, and deeply faithful girl who dreamed of becoming a teacher. She seemed to be a perfectly normal, well-adjusted teenager. But in 1968, when she was 16, something shattered that ordinary life. She experienced a sudden, violent convulsion. Her body went rigid, and she fell into a trance-like state. It happened again that night, this time with terrifying force. Then, just as quickly, the symptoms vanished. Everyone hoped it was a one-time thing, maybe brought on by stress. They were wrong.
A year later, the seizures returned with a vengeance. This time, doctors got involved. After a neurological workup, Anneliese was diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy, a condition known to sometimes cause hallucinations. She was soon also diagnosed with depression and treated at a psychiatric hospital. But despite being put on anticonvulsant drugs and other medications over the next 5 years, her condition only got worse. The terror became a part of her daily life. She started seeing twisted, sneering faces and was tormented by smells that no one else could detect. Most disturbingly, she began hearing voices whispering to her during prayer, telling her she was damned. Her faith, once her greatest comfort, became a source of torment. Holy water felt like fire on her skin, and crucifixes seemed to burn her eyes. By 1973, she was also being treated for severe depression, and her behavior, as reported in later accounts, became increasingly bizarre. There are stories of her eating spiders and coal, licking her own urine off the floor, and barking like a dog for days. In fits of religious fervor, she would perform hundreds of genuflections a day, which eventually led to her rupturing the ligaments in her knees. The girl who once loved the church was now screaming for hours on end, destroying religious symbols. Her voice deepened into a guttural growl, and she started speaking with a theological knowledge that seemed beyond her years. Watching their daughter waste away, and with medical treatments proving ineffective, the Michel family became convinced there was only one explanation left: demonic possession. They pleaded with the Catholic Church for an exorcism, but were repeatedly rejected as the church pointed to her medical history. Finally, in 1975, a priest named Father Ernst Alt agreed to visit. According to his account, he noticed her extreme aversion to religious objects. This, for Father Alt, was all the proof he needed. He, along with another pastor, Arnold Renz, spent a year petitioning the local bishop, Joseph Stengel. They argued Anneliese met the criteria for possession: aversion to holy items, speaking in voices that weren't her own, and demonstrating unusual strength. In September of 1975, Bishop Stengel secretly gave his approval for the rite of exorcism. Father Alt and Father Renz prepared to confront whatever had taken hold of Anneliese. From September 1975 to June 1976, Anneliese Michel underwent 67 exorcism sessions. Lasting for hours at a time, these rites were a brutal confrontation with the forces tormenting her. To document the process, the priests recorded over 40 of these sessions. With those tapes captured is the stuff of nightmares.
According to the priests, 6 distinct demons spoke through Anneliese in deep, guttural voices. They claimed to be Lucifer, Cain, Judas Iscariot, the Roman Emperor Nero, a disgraced 16th century priest named Fleischmann, and even Adolf Hitler. These entities would argue with each other and curse the priests. While it's claimed they spoke in languages Anneliese shouldn't have known, like Aramaic, this is a point of major controversy and isn't well supported. During the rites, Anneliese, a frail young woman, was said to have displayed incredible strength, sometimes needing to be held down or restrained. At her own request, her parents stopped consulting with doctors and ceased her medication. In her rare moments of clarity, she told her family she believed her suffering was a form of holy penance, a sacrifice to atone for the sins of modern youth and priests. Driven by this conviction, she began to refuse food. As the months of exorcisms wore on, Anneliese's body withered. The rites, combined with self-imposed starvation, took a devastating toll. On June 30th, 1976, after her final exorcism, she spoke her last reported words. To Father Renz, she said, "Beg for absolution." Then she turned to her mother and whispered, "Mama, I'm afraid." The next morning, July 1st, 1976, Anneliese Michel was dead. She was 23 years old and weighed only 68 pounds. The official cause of death was severe malnutrition and dehydration. Her death immediately triggered an investigation. What had been a secret spiritual battle was about to become a public spectacle. In March 1978, Anneliese's parents, Josef and Anna, along with priests Ernst Alt and Arnold Renz, were put on trial for negligent homicide. The prosecution argued that Anneliese wasn't possessed, but was a deeply disturbed young woman suffering from epilepsy and psychosis. They argued her religious fanaticism, encouraged by the priests and her parents, led her to starve herself to death. The defense countered by playing the audio tapes in the courtroom. For the first time, the public heard the demonic voices. Jurors were reportedly stunned as the sounds from the exorcisms echoed through the German court. The court faced an impossible task. In the end, all 4 were found guilty of negligent homicide. Acknowledging that the parents had suffered enough, the judge gave them a suspended sentence of 6 months with probation.
The story doesn't end there. Anneliese's grave has become a pilgrimage site for believers who see her as a martyr who sacrificed herself in a battle against evil. Skeptics in the medical community maintain that her case is a tragic example of misdiagnosed mental illness, where religious fervor and a failure to provide medical care ultimately led to her death. They point to temporal lobe epilepsy, which can cause exactly the kinds of hallucinations and religious visions she experienced. Yet, some questions linger. Believers ask how she displayed such a powerful aversion to holy objects and spoke in voices that seem so alien. The audio recordings persist as the most haunting legacy of the case, a raw, unfiltered document of a horror that defies easy explanation. They force us to consider a possibility that science can't measure and that reason struggles to dismiss. Was Anneliese Michel a victim of mental illness and religious delusion, or was she fighting a spiritual war that we can't comprehend? Her story is a chilling reminder that there are some shadows that even the brightest lights of science struggle to fully penetrate. The case leaves us with more questions than answers. What do you believe truly happened to Anneliese Michel? Was it a medical tragedy or something more? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.